No trespassing. The no trespassing sign was old and weathered, its red letters faded, clawed by time and the relentless grasp of ivy. It stood at the entrance to Hollow Creek Woods, where the trees were gnarled and blackened, their twisted branches stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The locals spoke in hushed tones about these woods, warning outsiders to stay away. People go in, but they don't come out, the bartender at Miller's Tavern had muttered to Ethan and Amara the night before. Ethan had laughed it off. Urban legends didn't scare him. Amara, however, wasn't so sure. Now, as they stood before the sign, a thick fog creeping between the trees, she hesitated. "Ethan, maybe we shouldn't." "Come on, Amara," Ethan said, flashing his usual reckless grin. "It's just a bunch of trees. We'll be in and out before dark." Amara sighed, but followed. The crunch of leaves underfoot filled the silence as they ventured deeper. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of decaying wood and something metallic like rust or blood. They walked for what felt like hours. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the forest felt. The trees leaned inward as if whispering secrets. Then they found the cabin. It sat in a clearing, its wooden walls blackened with age, the windows shattered. A faint flicker of movement inside made Amara grab Ethan's arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head but stepped closer. "Probably just an animal." Amara's gut twisted. "Then why is there a light on?" Ethan ignored her and stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath his weight. A tattered curtain fluttered inside, as if something had moved past it. Then they heard it. A woman's voice, soft and pleading. "Help me." Amar's breath hitched. "We need to go." But Ethan had already pushed the door open. The inside was eerily clean, untouched by time. A wooden table stood in the center of the room, with a single chair beside it. A tape recorder sat atop the table, playing the same desperate plea. "Help me, please." Amara's skin prickled. "Ethan, this isn't right." Then, the floor creaked behind them. They turned just as the door slammed shut on its own. The room darkened. The wall seemed to shift, warping and breathing. A putrid stench filled the air, like rotting meat. Amara's stomach lurched. Then, a whisper drifted through the air. Not from the recorder. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan grabbed Amara's hand, yanking her toward the door, but the handle wouldn't budge. Something moved in the shadows. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman, her skin gray and waxy, eyes sunken, lips split. Her dress was torn, stained with something dark. Her fingers twitched unnaturally. Ethan took a step back, pulling Amara with him. "Who are you?" he managed to choke out. The woman lifted a trembling hand and pointed behind them. Slowly, Amara turned. The tape recorder was gone. In its place was something far worse. A photograph, old and yellowed, of two bodies lying in the dirt, their faces contorted in agony. Ethan and Amara's faces. Amara's scream caught in her throat. Her legs trembled. "What the hell is this?" The woman's whisper grew softer. "You must leave, before he comes back." A loud bang echoed from the back of the cabin. The woman's head snapped toward the noise. Her face twisted in terror. "Run!" The door flew open. Amara didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Ethan's arm and bolted. The woods were darker now, the trees closer. The branches seemed to claw at them, snagging their clothes. A heavy presence loomed behind them, something fast and inhuman. They ran until the no trespassing sign came into view. But before they could reach it, Ethan tripped. Amara turned, gasping. "Ethan." His eyes were wide, his face pale. I can't move." Something unseen held him down. The air around him shimmered, warping like heat waves. Then, out of the darkness, a hand, long, skeletal, fingers curled like talons, gripped his ankle and dragged him back. Ethan screamed. Amara lunged forward, grabbing his hands, pulling with all her strength. No, the unseen force was too strong. Ethan's fingers slipped through hers. His scream cut off abruptly. Then, nothing. The forest was silent. Amara fell to her knees, gasping, tears streaking her face. Ethan. There was no trace of him. No footprints. No sign he had ever existed. Only the no trespassing sign, now splattered with fresh red streaks. And beneath it, carved into the wood, a new message. You were warned. Amara's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The world around her spun, the trees blurring into twisted shadows. Ethan was gone. Not dead. Not missing. Gone. As if he had never existed. Her shaking hands touched the sign. The red streaks were still wet. Blood. Ethan's blood. You were warned. A chilling wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint, distorted voice, Ethan's voice. Amara. She jerked up. Ethan? Her voice echoed, swallowed instantly by the dense fog curling around the trees. Silence. Then, a footstep behind her. She spun, heart pounding. Nothing but trees. Another footstep. Closer. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt cemented to the ground. Then, fingers brushed her shoulder. Amara screamed and bolted, crashing through the underbrush. The branches tore at her skin. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. She needed to get out. Now, the sign loomed ahead. Just a few more steps. Something grabbed her ankle. She tripped, hitting the ground hard. A cold grip clamped around her leg, pulling her backward. Amara kicked wildly, twisting to see nothing. But the grip was still there, unseen fingers digging into her skin. Let me go, she shrieked, clawing at the dirt. Suddenly, the pressure vanished. Gasping, Amara scrambled to her feet and ran. She tore through the woods, bursting onto the main road. The no trespassing sign stood behind her, motionless. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. She ran all the way back to town. Nobody remembers Miller's Tavern was warm, filled with laughter and chatter, but Amara felt frozen. She stumbled inside, her hair tangled, hands shaking. The bartender looked up. Miss, you all right? Ethan, she gasped, gripping the counter. He's gone. Something took him in the woods. The bartender frowned. Ethan? My friend. Ethan. We went into the woods, and she stopped. The bartender's blank expression made her stomach twist. You came in alone, he said. Amara's heart dropped. No, I didn't. We were here last night. You warned us about Hollow Creek. The bartender shook his head. Miss, I don't know what you're talking about. She turned desperately to the other patrons. Please. Someone must remember him. Blank stares. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. It was as if Ethan had never existed. Then, the TV above the bar crackled. Static flickered before an old, grainy news broadcast appeared. A black and white photo. 2 missing people. Her own face stared back at her. And next to her, Ethan. The bartender followed her gaze and went pale. What the hell? The broadcast continued. Authorities are still investigating the disappearance of Amara Cole and Ethan Blake, last seen near Hollow Creek Woods. Locals warn against trespassing, as several others have vanished over the years. Amara's blood ran cold. Her own missing persons case was playing live. She took a shaky step back. The bar flickered like an old film reel. The voices warped. The air around her shimmered, just like when Ethan was taken. A shadow moved behind her. A whisper brushed her ear. You shouldn't be here. The world lurched, and everything went dark. Trapped Amara's eyes fluttered open. The air was damp, cold. She was lying on the floor of the cabin. The table, the chair, the tape recorder. She shot up, chest heaving. No, 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 no. She had escaped, hadn't she? The door was closed. The windows were boarded up. And then a familiar voice from the recorder. Help me, please. Her own voice. Amara's throat clenched. This was how it started. The cycle. The trap. Then, outside, she heard it. Footsteps. Someone approaching the cabin. A new voice. A man's voice. Did you see that? A second voice, a woman's. Ethan, maybe we shouldn't. Amara's stomach dropped. She stumbled to the window, peering through a small crack. Two figures stood outside. A young man and a young woman. Another Ethan. Another Amara. No, not them. New victims. The door creaked open. Amara turned and saw herself standing in the shadows. A broken, trapped version of herself. She opened her mouth, but the only words that came out were, "You shouldn't be here." The door slammed shut. The cycle continued.